For USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Dan Wilbur. Instant analysis of the Western Michigan game. USC comes out with a win, 49-31, but the score is a little misleading. It felt a lot closer throughout the whole game.
Was a lot closer. I mean, USC's down. It has to basically come back in the second half, and Western Michigan's a good team.
Mm-hmm.
Good team, better than they thought they were going to be. Might be the hardest running backs they played all year, or going to play all year, and they probably weren't ready. I mean, they weren't sure what was Western Michigan going to do with a bunch of new coaches. So they basically got ready for kind of three different offenses. Unfortunately, Western Michigan did what they did last year, and if you'd have had to guess, that's what you would have guessed they were going to do. They couldn't tackle them, and they couldn't get much push up front with the defensive line. So they learned some lessons. They got embarrassed a little bit, and they know it. The defense is, our defense is really great. They'll fix it by next week. So, I mean, it wasn't like, everybody. I mean, it was obvious. I think Western Michigan gained 262 yards on the ground. That's just not acceptable.
Mm-hmm. We've heard from a couple players post-game that they wish they tackled a little bit more in fall camp. How do you fix something like missed tackles in a week's time?
You do tackle more. I think there was probably, and this is what you're sitting up there thinking, have they been too concerned about the fact that they have 12 straight games and no bye? And they're thinking all those 12 games, but they weren't thinking about this opener and being ready for a team that had won 13 games last year, and you just don't always know until you're out on the field with them how good they are. And so I think they can fix it a lot. Can they fix it all the way? I don't know. I think they will be doing some tackling this week because they better be ready to tackle Saturday night. It's that simple.
Mm-hmm. Clay Helton said coming into this game his biggest concern overall was the wide receiver group, and if you go off what we were seeing too, we were kind of concerned coming into this game. How does that develop? How do you get those wide receivers ready for a Stanford or a Texas?
I'm not sure. Today, one of the thoughts was they'd throw it to Deontay, he'd catch it. They'd throw it to Deontay, he'd catch it. They'd throw it to somebody else, he'd drop it. Throw it to somebody else. And I kept thinking, is he just sort of trying to eliminate all the guys that are going to drop passes until he comes up with the ones that aren't? And that was not a good start for the wide receivers. If you're even a Tyler Vaughn's and you're not out there with the starters, and then they hit you in the hands and you drop it. That was a tough way to go for the wide receivers. They just and Clay, I think, clearly was talking about the wide receivers when he talked about the guys that had the big wide eyes, that this maybe was not something they were quite ready for. I don't know, if it were me, I might keep throwing it to Deontay and keep allowing Rojo to run it until they either stop Rojo or stop Deontay, rather than spread. I know they want to have balance. I know Sam just said, I hate to get into one of those deals where I'm just throwing it to one guy. But today, you might have just wanted to throw it to one guy or let two guys run the ball when you saw Stephen Carr eventually in there. But this was a challenge. This was a tough opener. It's probably in the long run a good thing, but boy, was it, not. It was scary, I guess, more than anything, because this game was kind of out of their control, and yet they did play with poise at the end, and they played with toughness, and they finished strong, and so you got to like that.
Yeah, another thing you can like are the running backs. I mean, you saw Stephen Carr's debut. He had 2 touchdowns on the day. Ronald Jones, like we said, with the 10 pounds added, he's a kind of a different back. He was running through guys on the defense.
Yeah, he's running for the NFL. I don't think there's any question about it. He knows he's stronger. He knows he's more explosive. He knows he can run into people and knock them down and keep running. I mean, there were a couple of plays where he knocked 3 guys. He knocked one guy down, then he'd go to the next guy, knock him down, go to the next guy, knock him down. So that was a really plus. I think we saw, for the most part, pretty decent play by the offensive line. I think we saw pretty good downfield blocking. So I think that part of the game, they looked pretty physical. On the defensive end, he didn't look as physical as you would have liked him. The edge guys, Chenna just said, I just didn't play well. I mean, I'm just sorry. That was not the way I wanted to come out. The 2 edge guys, Chenna and Porter, didn't look like they knew where they wanted to be. The 2 down tackles looked like they were getting pushed back a lot. I think Rasheem kind of rallied there in the third quarter, fourth quarter, but they got manhandled a little bit, and I think they know it.
Yeah, if you were paying attention in the preseason, the defense was kind of hyped up. They seemed like they were the stronger out of the offense or the defense. Why do you think this happened?
Nobody has a good answer. I mean, I'll tell people, I saw 35, counting PRPs and practices. I saw them 35 times since June. This was the most lethargic, least engaged defense that I've seen the whole time. I mean, they played. I mean, the stuff they did in the summer was terrific. They were the leaders. They were the drivers. They were now. You got to understand they were without Cam Smith for the first half, so that meant a little bit. You could tell when he's out there, he's not afraid to do things. He doesn't sit back and they but this was. No one has a good answer. It's the why question. They just shake their head and they don't know. No one argues that isn't the case, that this was worse than any effort they've put out all year. But they just shake their head. They give credit to Western Michigan, but as to what was going on with them, they do not have a good answer.
Mm-hmm. Not to make excuses for this team, if you will, but I mean, I was on the field. It was 103 at one point. How much do you think the heat, I know we were hearing from the guys that it played a factor, but I mean, how much from what you saw do you think that was a factor?
I think it always matters a little bit when you've got big, NFL type running backs and everybody's just completely sweaty, from head to toe. It's sometimes tough to, get a real grasp on them and take them down. So I think that was a part of it. I don't think there's any question. But I think they weren't playing full speed. They weren't playing fast. They weren't. That was the whole thought of this is the second year of Clancy's defense. This is the year you can play fast. You don't have to think. You just go out and play. That didn't look like what they were doing at all. Now, they say that wasn't the case. That they weren't thinking too much. But one of the, Seahawks said we got ready for 3 different offenses, and we were, So I think they were thinking a little bit. I think they were trying to figure out, what was this team going to do, and what are we supposed to do as a result. And then they, I think by the second half they kind of figured it out. They still weren't physical enough.
Mm-hmm. Lastly, by far the best part of the game, blind long snapper Jake Olson was able to get in the game, which didn't look likely from what we saw, and he had a perfect snap, and it was such a great moment all around.
And it was a really good moment for everybody involved, including Western Michigan, because they allowed, the extra time to get Jake set up, and they allowed, and they didn't try to do anything to screw him up, and they were very congratulatory for him, and showed a whole lot of class by Coach Tim Lester and Western Michigan and their players, and that was great. And then Jake and his mom and dad, and he's worked so hard for this, and it was one of those things. You didn't know it was going to come, this week. And I've been telling people they really do want to get him in there. They really want to do this, and they're going to if they can, whether it was going to be today. And he said when it happened, it really went fast. Wyatt Schmidt, the holder, has to get him out there, get him lined up. But Jake said that's the thing, that it just all went so quick. They called the snap, and boom, he snapped it. And Jake said that was a beautiful thing. He just – you love it when Jake talks about he's going to enjoy seeing the video tonight and going over it and going over the play. And he just talks about, the things he sees and how privileged he thinks he is to be, a part of this and to get this kind of a chance. Having been here as a 12-year-old, getting to conduct the band, 12-year-old was still with sight, and now he's 8 years later, he's back. He said it's just almost impossible for him to comprehend that 12-year-old who could see is back blind and yet gets a chance to snap for USC. And it is a wonderful story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually got to interview him, so you can check that out later. He actually said the sword was lighter this time, which is funny.
Well, I didn't know if they didn't want it, or were a little hesitant to give it to him because, just climbing a ladder is not easy for Jake. So he gets up there and he's leading the band with the fight on sign. And then somebody delivers him the sword, and he's got the sword in one hand, the fight on in the other, and he just couldn't have done a better a better job in acknowledging the band in the front and the crowd behind him, and it was and they're chanting "We love Jake," and it was just a wonderful moment. And for all the negativity about much of that game, you've got the Jake Olson moment that just probably overwhelms everything, because that's all you're going to see on TV, I think, because all the TVs are lined up, and you got in there to get an interview, which is really neat. His parents are great.
Mm-hmm.
His dog, his dog,
So
his dog
cute.
was standing right there, and he just watching out for everything for Jake. Is just wonderful deal.
Mm-hmm. All right, that's going to wrap it up from the Coliseum. For Dan Weber, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.